This is a chimney. It might not be much to look at, but this pile of bricks used to be part of an innovative building that had a major impact on its surrounding community and beyond. Right here in Westernville, New York, two men started what would become a significant milestone in food preservation and distribution. Olney and Floyd. A partnership that has a legacy that continues to this day and has all sorts of byproducts. Like me. I'm going to explain how that works, and at the same time dive into what I find to be some fascinating local New York history about two of my great-great-grandfathers. One of them, George Brill Olney, was born in 1852 in West Leiden. He was educated in Whitestone Seminary before going off to school near Buffalo, and eventually coming back, marrying Miss Amelia Hill, and considering a business idea that might just be the next best thing. To do that, he would need the help of Charles Francis Floyd, who was born a year after George and raised in Westernville. A descendant of a signer of the Declaration of Independence, Charles would serve as the vice president of Rome City Bank and director at Rome Trust Company before connecting with George Olney in the late 1800s for the idea of a lifetime. It was right in the heart of the Industrial Revolution, and the concept of canning factories was on the rise. You have farmers growing all sorts of crops, and new canning technology allowed their produce to be preserved and helped supply a quickly growing market. Westernville was surrounded by fertile farmland, and so it was an ideal location for canning operations. George B. and C. Frank saw an opportunity and agreed to start a canning business there. They acquired the Joseph Dale Tannery building and hired a man named Will Payne to teach them how to make a can of corn. By the spring of 1881, they were off and running. Their modest venture would soon blossom into a pioneering force in the realm of food processing machinery. It became a hub of activity, employing many locals and allowing farmers to bring their freshly harvested crops, such as peas, to be processed and canned. In a world before fast food, Olney and Floyd was serving up convenience in a can. And the process went something like this. The cans were filled with corn, pressure cooked with steam, then sealed with a drop of lead, which would create a vacuum. The cans were then left to cool in giant baskets on the ground to ensure the preservation within. The factory in Westernville was right next to a creek, and so it had the necessary water for steam generation and cooling. Things grew quick, and so much so that it prompted the company to expand. With just a few years of experience under their belts, George and Charles decided to purchase a second plant in 1884, alongside the Mohawk River in a quiet village known as Delta. It must have been a sight to see, looking at the factory buildings, meticulously spread out and crowned by an iconic, towering chimney. Wisps of smoke from it would signal the start of a busy day. Machinery would hum to life, ready to transform a bounty of vegetables into canned delights. The Olney and Floyd expansion into Delta allowed for a wider variety of canned products, including beans, pumpkin, squash, tomatoes, spinach, beets, and more. The cornerstone of the enterprise was corn. It was harvested by hand, transported in horse-drawn wagons, and shucked before being packed and sent off to places like Rome via transportation networks like the Black River Canal. And business was good. By 1886, the Westernville and Delta factories were collectively producing 1 million cans annually and would soon employ more than 100 workers. At this time, Oneida County was emerging as a canning powerhouse, and it was fueled by enterprises like Olney and Floyd. Around this time, C. Frank Floyd married Eleanor Parmalee, a descendant of State Senator George Brayton, and these two would soon welcome daughter Catherine Brayton. By that point, George B. and his wife Amelia had already given birth to a son, George J. Olney. And just a quick side note, I'm going to get back to these two newborns when they're a little bit older. At the turn of the century, Olney and Floyd continued to innovate in order to meet a growing demand. They would introduce various brand labels, such as Butterfly, Electric, and Cloth of Gold. These labels would wrap cans beautifully. You might even recognize some of them because they've since become popular vintage decorations. It was the golden age of canning, and it's no surprise that there was increased competition in the business. And Olney and Floyd also had to deal with the state prepping to flood the village of Delta, soon to be Delta Lake. In response, they moved the Delta factory to Lee Center and began operations in 1911. By about that time, George J. Olney had grown into a young man who loved to tinker and experiment with machinery. He worked out of a warehouse of his old man's factory in Westernville, and it would soon come to be known as simply the shop. Over in Lee, the relocated Delta factory was soon thriving, churning out a diverse array of canned goods, including corn, pearl onions, and succotash, all bearing an assortment of attractive labels. And at some point, while everyone was busy hustling, a budding romance began to form between George J., the first son of Olney, and Catherine B., the first daughter of Floyd. The two would be married in 1916 at the Westernville Presbyterian Church. And just like that, my great-grandparents were wed. They would go on to have 5 children, one of them being my Grandpa Jack Olney. So I'm very glad that these two found each other. In fact, I'm anything because these two found each other. Anywho, after their marriage, GJ's experiments in the shop, such as the Olney mixer, led to the founding of GJ Olney Incorporated. By 1920, GJ Olney Incorporated had introduced the Olney washer, which revolutionized the cleaning process for peas and was implemented over at the Lee Center factory, sparking a rapid growth in operations. Over the ensuing 6 decades, the cannery in Lee Center thrived, employing over 200 workers at its peak. Their canned vegetables would go to prominent stores like A&P and played a crucial role in the local economy, as the other factories had in their respective communities. However, even with all this prosperity, by 1971, times had changed, and the Lee Center factory soon closed its doors. By that point, the Westernville canning factory had also been closed, and George Brill Olney and Charles Francis Floyd, my grandpa's grandpas, were no longer with us. All was not lost, however. GJ Olney Incorporated was still bustling with activity over in Westernville. It's a direct business offspring of Olney and Floyd. And that's merely a testament to the original partnership that helped lay the groundwork for modern food processing in Oneida County and America. And as of this recording, the shop is still going strong. Heck, I've even drilled a few holes over there. And I like to think that it's one of those places where the spirit of Olney and Floyd lives on. With a chimney out back, quietly nodding to a simpler time. Have a good one.